Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I have a very wonderful podcast that I want to share up with you today. It is highly educative and highly entertaining. It is titled, Has Science Buried God? Wow, you would like to know which God is that? Which God has science buried? It is a contest, a wonderful podcast between a scientist and a theologian. Let's dive into this video. Watch and learn a very important lesson from it.
On this glorious fall day.
It is highly educative. I must encourage you, stay tuned to watch and learn from this wonderful podcast. You know, we learn every day. You have to get it very clear this time around to know if truly science has buried God or not. You are all welcome once again to my channel. Do not forget to like and subscribe.
And even debates within its hallowed walls.
Wow, it is a very wonderful podium.
But one debate in particular remains ingrained on the public memory, and that's the encounter between the Bishop of Oxford, Samuel Wilberforce, and Thomas Huxley, who met here in 1860, 1 year after the publication of Darwin's Origin of Species, to debate man's common descent from the animal kingdom.
Wow.
And now in the 21st century, religion, especially its relationship to science, is a topic that is hotter than ever. In just a short time, 500 people fortunate enough to have tickets will cram into this natural history museum to witness a historic debate on science, philosophy, and God.
Wow.
The protagonists are well suited to the task. Professors John Lennox and Richard Dawkins. John Lennox is a mathematician and philosopher of science, and Richard Dawkins, until recently, Charles Simonyi Chair for Public Understanding of Science.
Wow, that's a very great one.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Welcome to Oxford University's Museum of Natural History. Tonight features a discussion between Professors Richard Dawkins and John Lennox, both of the University of Oxford. This is not the first time that these two men have met. Indeed, they debated one another last autumn in Birmingham, Alabama. In that encounter, the Wall Street Journal said that they displayed rhetorical skills in the best British tradition. The theme this evening is, Has Science Buried God?
Has science
buried God? There are three
topics
of conversation. First is the issue of science itself, gap.
Wonderful viewers, at this juncture, I wanna also welcome your comments. Let's also share our thought, our comment on this wonderful topic. Has science buried God? Child of God, do you still believe? Do you think that science has buried God? Why will such contest be brought to this podium? Has science buried God? What are they thinking? Why would they come to this conclusion? Let me hear your own suggestion, your own opinion at the comment section. Please do not forget to stick on sharing and liking our videos. Thank you so much. This is the only way you can also support us on this mission.
Faith and evidence and so forth. And then finally, they will move into the topic of morality and purpose. If there is no God, where does that leave us? Now, we'll give this discussion roughly 50 minutes, and then there will be a Q&A. We will be collecting questions from the seated area right here, and then submitting them to the two men on stage. This will take about 20 minutes or so. And then we invite the media to withdraw to the lecture room upstairs, where these two gentlemen will meet with you briefly before coming down for a book signing. So this will give those of you here in the audience an opportunity to purchase a book, to queue up, and to meet these men who are on the stage. Now, we do apologize for a lack of seating. You will agree with me, however, that this is a wonderful venue in terms of its beauty and its history. I should also note that there is no unauthorized photography or filming of any kind. And indeed, tonight's event is being filmed.
That's so great.
Is an acknowledgement that you understand that. and that you are okay with
Please
that. We
do not
encourage
forget
you
to
move
like and
around
subscribe to our
the
channel,
gallery. There's
please.
still some places behind us here that you can see and perhaps hear
We promise
also
to be
in the
bringing
gallery.
very
So do not
educative and
crowd
entertainment
in these
content
spaces here. We thank the museum.
to our
We thank
viewers.
Richard Dawkins and John Lennox for their willingness to participate. They're
We
both
also
very busy
appreciate you
men.
for stopping by.
Richard has this week his Simone
I believe you'll be so
valedictory
happy that you
lecture,
come
which is
across
a
this
very
video today.
important lecture for him. This takes place on Thursday night at the Oxford Playhouse. Would you like to say a word or two about that?
I've been in the Simone professorship for about 12 years. For the last 10 years, I've had an annual lecture by a distinguished scientist, which I have organized, and that is coming to an end this year because I'm giving it myself, no longer distinguished, and that's this Thursday. It'll be my farewell. It will be the 10th of the Simone lectures, and I hope it'll be a grand gala occasion. Unfortunately, it was sold out about 2 months ago, so I don't know why I'm plugging it really, but...
Well, that sounds very exciting, and John Lennox, you are have been busy preparing a new edition of your book.
That's right. The book's called God's Undertaker, Has Science Buried God?, which is in fact the title of our discussion this evening, and I'm trying to respond to comments people have made and to extend it a little bit. It'll come out with Lion Hudson, I hope, in the new year.
Well, very good. Well, gentlemen, we will begin here, but first I want to remind you that we have to stay on schedule, and the T-Rex is actually mechanized. So if you get out of bounds, we do have men who will operate that. So we'll begin with Richard. Richard, the question as we begin is, has science buried God?
Well, which God? I mean, we could take Einstein's God, which is not really a personal God at all, but which is a sort of poetic metaphor for the mystery, that which we don't understand about the universe. We could take a deist God, a sort of God of the physicists, a God of somebody like Paul Davies, who devised the laws of physics, God the mathematician, God who put together the cosmos in the first place and then sat back and watched everything happen. And that would be, the deist God would be one that I think it would be, one could make a reasonably respectable case for that, not a case that I would accept, but I think it is a serious discussion that we could have. The third kind of God is one of which there are thousands and thousands of varieties, Zeus and Thor and Apollo and Amun-Ra and Yahweh. And we don't actually need to go through all those because I've, as Larry has said, I've encountered John Lennox before, and I know what the God he believes in, which is the Christian God. So we only have to talk about the Christian God.
Wow.
John Lennox is a scientist who
That's
believes
very
that
interesting.
Jesus turned water into wine. A scientist who believes that Jesus somehow influenced all those molecules of H2O.
Wow.
And introduced proteins and carbohydrates and tannins and alcohol and turned it into wine.
Wow.
He believes that Jesus walked on water. I had been accustomed to debating with sophisticated theologians, and I come across John Lennox, who is a scientist who believes in all those things. In particular, he believes that the creator of the universe, the God who devised the laws of physics, the laws of mathematics, the physical constants, who devised the parsecs of space, billions of light years of space, billions of years of time, that this paragon of physical science, this genius of mathematics, couldn't think of a better way to rid the world of sin than to come to this little speck of cosmic dust and have himself tortured and executed so that he could forgive himself.
Hi, science.
That is
Science is so funny.
unscientific. Not only is it unscientific, it doesn't do justice to the grandeur of the universe. It's petty and small-minded. And that's the God that John Lennox believes in.
This is so hilarious. The study of science has made many to question God. Well, let's hear from the theologians and also to learn, because I believe we all are here to learn. But at this aspect of scientists, I have no speech on them at the
Well,
moment.
Richard, thank you for explaining so clearly, at least in part, what I
Thanks
believe.
you.
I'm glad to hear you say that you feel a good case could be made out that there is rationality behind the universe. You said it's not something you personally accept. So you believe that this universe is just a freak accident. There's no mind behind it.
Yes.
And yet here you are with one of the best minds
Yes.
in the world. So you believe a number of things that I, as a scientist, find very difficult to believe.
Yes.
And we can certainly talk about my specific Christian faith later, but I confess to it absolutely. I think that there is a creator of the universe.
All right.
He created it, but he's not just a force, he's a person. And we are persons created in his image. And you say that God becoming human and Christ dying on a cross and rising from the dead is petty.
Yeah.
I think the exact opposite. It's not petty.
It's not.
Because it deals seriously with the fundamental problem that I don't think atheism even begins to deal with, and that is the problem of our alienation with God. Of course, that makes no sense unless we believe in God.
Very true, very true, very true.
We should proceed. Perhaps the best way to start would be this. As a scientist, we both believe in the rational intelligibility of the universe. I believe the universe is rationally intelligible because there's a creator God behind it. Now, how do you account for the rational intelligibility of the universe?
Well, John, you said that I believe that the universe is a freak accident, which is the opposite of what you believe. For many years, for many centuries indeed, it seemed perfectly obvious that it couldn't possibly be a freak accident because you only had to look at living creatures, the sort of magnificent diversity we see in this museum, and everything looked designed. And so it was clearly preposterous to suggest that it was due to any kind of freak accident. Darwin came along and showed that it's not actually a freak accident, but nor is it designed. There's a third way, which in the case of biology is evolution by natural selection, which produces a close imitation of something that is designed. It's not designed, we know that now, we understand how it happened, but it looks very designed. Now the cosmos hasn't yet had its Darwin. We don't yet know how the laws of physics came into existence, how the physical constants came into existence, and so we can still say, is it a freak accident or was it designed? The analogy with biology might discourage us from being too confident that it's designed, because we had our fingers burned before the 19th century in thinking that biology, which looks so much more obviously designed, that we got our fingers burned there. Now, in the case of the cosmos, freak accident or design, the point that I've made over and over again is that even if we don't understand how it came about, it's not helpful to postulate a creator, because the creator is the very kind of thing that needs an explanation. And although it's difficult enough to explain how a very simple origin of the universe came into being, how matter and energy, how one or two physical constants came into existence, although it's difficult enough to think how simplicity came into existence, it's a hell of a lot harder to think how something as complicated as a god comes into existence, difficult enough to think of how a deist God comes into existence, and even more difficult to think of how a Christian God who actually cares about things like sin and gets himself born of a virgin.
Well, there are 3 or 4 different issues there, aren't there? There's the question of what Darwin did and so on and so forth. But of course, as you have yourself admitted, as I understand it, Darwin didn't explain either the origin of life or the origin of the universe. And I would want to start there. You say we don't know how it came to be, but as scientists and cosmologists, physicists, we're studying it, and that very study and your own science assumes that the universe is rationally intelligible. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me that atheism is saying that the thoughts in our minds are in the end only the results of a mindless, unguided process. Now, if that is the case, it seems to me that it's very difficult to see how they could tell us anything that is true about ourselves. I think it was Steven Pinker who said, wasn't it, that evolution has to do with reproductive success and nothing to do with truth. And John Gray, who's also an atheist, I understand, made the point not long ago that the problem with Darwinism, if you take it in its ultra form, it really undermines the notion that we can give any credence to what we think. So it seems to me that your atheism undermines the very rationality that I assume and you assume when we go to study the universe. So that's the first point I would make.
Let me answer that. It seems to me a quite absurd thing to say that because we are saying that our minds are produced by brains and brains evolve by evolution, by natural selection, therefore that somehow undermines our ability to understand anything. Why on earth should that be? I mean, natural selection builds brains which are good at surviving, and brains that are good at surviving are brains that are surviving in the world.
But where does the concept of truth, how do they come to recognize things like truth if those thoughts are simply reducible to physics and chemistry and neurophysiology? How do they serve truth?
Truth is what happens. An animal that was attempting to survive and that didn't recognize truth or falsehood in some sense at whatever level is appropriate for the kind of survival that it has, it wouldn't survive. I mean, truth just means that you're living in the real world and you behave in the real world in such a way as things make sense in the real world. When you see a rock in your way, you don't go charging into it. You die if you did that. If you jumped over a cliff, you die. That's truth. It's perfectly obvious that natural selection would favor in any animal a brain that behaves in a way that recognizes truth and acts upon it.
Well, I can't resist a little quip, but I notice many of my fellow human beings doing very well through telling lies. I can't for the life of me say...
Point.
It's a separate point, but I can't see how natural selection would produce this truth. But coming back to that in itself, you say this illusion of design, and of course I find your writing so fascinating because of the metaphors and images you use. I do envy that capacity. And you said somewhere that it's terribly, terribly tempting to believe that it has been designed. But the Darwin has shown us that this design is an illusion. But I've been very interested in the kind of thing that Simon Conway Morris has been saying recently, that if you take the evolutionary pathways, they're navigating through an informational hyperspace with phenomenal precision. And therefore, there is the impression of design at that level. I mean, if this mechanism that you talk about, which doesn't account for the origin of life at all, but let's leave that aside, if it is so phenomenally clever, then it itself is giving evidence that there's a mind behind it.
The whole point of Darwinian natural selection is that it works without design, without foresight,
but that's an
guidance.
assumption.
No, it's not an assumption. That is exactly how it works. Before Darwin came along, it looked perfectly obvious that even if evolution happened, there must be some guiding force to tell animals or plants how they ought to evolve. Natural selection is a blind force. The things that survive, survive. With hindsight, we can see that the ones that survive are the ones that are good at surviving. They have the genes that make them survive. Simon Conway Morris would not deny that. He's got some kind of, well, actually, I rather share his view of convergent evolution. We both of us are perhaps on the extreme end of Darwinians in that we emphasize the power of natural selection to home in on particular ends. Particularly, if you look around the museum, you'll see animals, marsupial animals, from Australia that uncannily resemble non-marsupial animals, and Simon and I are both extremely keen on that. But that's produced by natural selection, as he would say. Natural selection is a mechanical, blind, automatic force. It's not, I can't say it's not guided, but there's no need for it to be guided. The whole point is that it works.
All right, wonderful viewers, you must all agree with me that this topic is a very highly interesting one, and it's getting interesting and more interesting. I am dropping the podcast link, the video link of the original video at the comment section. Do not hesitate to still click on it to go and watch more, to learn more of it. To me, science has not buried God. Yes, and science will never bury God. And God is the originator of science. Science cannot be greater than its originator. Therefore, my wonderful viewers, I also want to hear your own comment. Do you believe that science has buried God? Is there anything that look like or that appear like science has buried God? Is there a God of the physicians and a God of the Christian? There is no two God. It's only but one God. Just a difference of perspective, a difference of belief. Let's hear from your own view too. Let's also share mine. Do comment and tell us, what do you feel about this topic as a child of God, as a Christian, as a believer, as a lover of God? Has science buried God, or is all this under a thought of hallucination and most of overthinking, or thinking that will not really make that meaningful sense to the body of Christ? We, the believers of Christ, always have it in mind that science has not buried God, and God still remains God. And this podcast has been evergreen. That is why I brought it up to my wonderful channel, so that we can learn from it and also have mind reasoning towards it. If science has buried God, science has never buried God. You all are warmly welcome once again. Wonderful viewer, do not forget to like, share and subscribe to our channel. We will be glad you support us in this mission. Thank you so much as we take you all on this journey. See you next time in our podcast, in our video. See you next time. Do not forget to keep on checking on us. Do not forget to keep on helping us in spreading of this gospel. The gospel must be reached and must be preached to the all nook and corners of the earth. Welcome once again to our channel. Do like and subscribe to be part of us. Be part of us in this family. We will be highly welcome. We'll be highly happy to welcome you in our space. Thank you once again, wonderful viewers. Thank you, our esteemed fans. Thank you.